Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. Patriot air defense batteries were offered to Poland by Germany. The Polish side believes that they are more needed by Ukrainians, who are killed by Russian missiles every day. The chairman of the Bundestag's European Affairs Committee agrees with this view. A completely different view is held by the German Defense Ministry, which claims that Patriots can only be stationed on the territory of a NATO country. Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of National Defense Mariusz Błaszczak, has indicated that Patriot batteries can effectively defend Polish skies from Ukrainian territory. The deployment of German Patriot launchers in Ukraine is beneficial to the security of the eastern part of our country, the southeastern part of our country, for the reason that anti-missile security in western Ukraine also means security in eastern Poland. President Andrzej Duda is of a similar opinion. From a military point of view, of course, it would be best if, for the protection of Polish territory as well, these missiles were located at some distance from the Polish border, on Ukrainian territory. The German political scene is divided on the issue. The chairman of the Bundestag's European Affairs Committee shares the opinion of Polish experts. I think Poland is absolutely right. Ukrainians definitely need these batteries more than Poles do. However, Berlin's official position contradicts Warsaw's proposal. These Patriots are part of NATO's defense capabilities. Using them outside of this area is simply not realistic now. The German government's doubts were allayed by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who reiterated that support for embattled Ukraine is decided by individual member states and that the alliance does not intend to block arms supplies.
NATO personnel has not conducted any work inside Ukraine. And again, this highlights that NATO is not party to the conflict. We don't have forces or troops on the ground, but NATO allies support Ukraine's right for self-defense. And we have that right to help them to uphold that right, and we do that by providing different types of advanced systems, but also by training them.
According to Professor Piotr Grochmalski, Germany has pursued a pro-Russian policy for years. The current geopolitical situation makes their previous vision of Eastern Europe unworkable. Germany has invested a huge amount of money in this type of scenario, that Russia will, so to say, sort out these areas, and there will be a strengthening of this gas alliance, in fact, a strategic alliance between Berlin and Moscow. On Sunday, Germany's defense ministry proposed support for Poland, including Patriot air defense systems and Eurofighter fighter jets to help protect our airspace from a possible missile threat from Russia. The Polish government responded positively to Berlin's initiative, but proposed that the system be stationed on Ukrainian territory. President Andrzej Duda was in Lithuania today, where he met with the presidents of Lithuania, Latvia, and Romania, and took part in the international conference The Idea of Europe, organized by Vytautas Magnus University in Kaunas, under the patronage of Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda. Our correspondent Łukasz Żmuda was on the site.
President Andrzej Duda wraz z prezydentami Litwy.
President Andrzej Duda, along with the presidents of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, President of Latvia, Egils Levits, and Romanian leader Klaus Iohannis, at a special conference conveyed the conclusions after a meeting they had held earlier in a four-way format, discussing, among other things, the situation in Ukraine, the outlook and future projections that may face the countries of Eastern Europe, which also constitute NATO's eastern flank.
Europy Wschodniej, które stanowią jednocześnie wschodnią flankę NATO.
We all stand today, presidents of Central European countries, by Ukraine and for Ukraine. Poland has supported Ukraine since the beginning, since Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and has supported Ukraine's defense. It supports it all the time and will continue to support it. We are part of the free world, and like the other nations of Central Europe, especially those represented here today by the presidents, we firmly believe that every European nation has the right to self-determination and the right to decide for itself. Also, it is obvious that the same right have the people of Ukraine.
Samostanowienia i do decydowania o sobie. Także i oczywiste to jest, że to samo prawo ma naród Ukrainy.
Speak in one voice has been our strength throughout the years. It is particularly valuable now in the face of Russian aggression. During our meeting, we discussed mainly two topics: how to strengthen our regional security and defense, and how to support Ukraine to win the war. We live in times of tremendous security threats and challenges, time that requires decisiveness, resolve, and unity.
And the idea of Europe was extremely useful, and I'm glad to note that we all share the view that fundamental values such as democracy, freedom, human rights, which are at the core of Europe.
A European idea consists nowadays of three elements. This is a political system, democracy, the first element. The second element is a cultural roots since 2,000 years, beginning with ancient times, and then Christianity formed as a European identity in a very important manner. And culture, and also we have to think about the European future, and the problem is where are the borders of Europe.
Wcześniej prezydenci wzięli udział
Earlier, the presidents attended the opening of an international symposium, The Idea of Europe, held at Vytautas Magnus University in Kaunas. During this conference, the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, spoke via online video connection. The front line in Ukraine is de facto front line of all of Europe. When someone asks the question of how Europe can support us, this phrase doesn't seem quite right, because by fighting Russia, Europe is also helping itself. We have to survive this winter together and win the war.
For ancient Greeks, Europe wasn't just a geographic term. It meant freedom, democracy, and the power in the hands of free citizens, the absence of autocracy. Today, the idea of Europe has gone back to its origins, and joining Europe.
From Kaunas, Łukasz Żmuda, TV Republika. A few days after withdrawing from Kherson, the Russians are shelling the city from the left bank of the Dnieper River, where they retreated after the recent Ukrainian counteroffensive. The shells hit residential buildings. Last night, 7 people were killed and 21 wounded in the city. Also in the south of the country, in the Nikopol region, the Russians fired at night using artillery and Grad launchers. This past week has seen intense missile attacks on Ukrainian cities. Today alone, after the shelling of Kherson, authorities reported 10 deaths and dozens of injuries.
Waves of deliberate missile attacks on cities and civilian infrastructure, depriving Ukrainians of heat, light and food. This is a horrific start to the winter for Ukraine. We are all paying a price for Russia's war against Ukraine. But the price we pay is in money, while the price Ukrainians pay is in blood.
Ukrainian authorities are gradually restoring electricity, water, and communications within their country. While providing electricity to critical infrastructure, we are also providing water and heat. The electricity situation remains difficult in almost all regions. We are gradually recovering from the outage. Step by step, we are restoring power every hour. In connection with the blackouts that have occurred in recent days in Ukraine, Parliament Speaker Roberta Metsola announced the Generators of Hope campaign. The idea is to provide Ukrainians with power generators to protect them from the effects of the coming winter.
We've shown remarkable solidarity with Ukraine on the humanitarian, military and financial front. Now they need practical support to get through the winter. We are teaming up with European cities to donate power generators to Ukraine, to bring energy and clean water to hospitals and people, to guarantee everyday services that we take for granted.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba discussed the difficult situation across Poland's eastern border with his British counterpart today. It should be mentioned, and here we agree with James, that the Russians are not looking for peace now. They are looking for some rest, to continue their aggression with renewed vigor, destroying Ukraine and Ukrainians. The head of the British Foreign Office announced the next tranche of aid to Ukraine.
So today I am announcing further funding to the Partnership Fund for Resilient Ukraine, which will support the Ukrainian government, local officials and Ukrainian communities to rebuild vital local infrastructure in cities, towns and villages that have been liberated from Russian occupation. The UK will also send 35 more vehicles to Ukraine.
The plight of our neighbors was one of the main topics on the second day of the fall conference of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Expressing solidarity with the Ukrainian people, this session will not be held with the lights on, but in the dark. During the session, the former spokesperson for Law and Justice raised the issue of human rights and refugees who have to flee their country due to armed conflicts. Every generation of Europeans has experienced armed conflicts, experienced bloodshed, and seen refugees who have had to flee conflict zones. With winter approaching, Poland must be ready for millions more of refugees from Ukraine. This issue was one of the topics of Minister Magdalena Maląg's conversation today on the Radio Z. The head of the Ministry of Family, Labor and Social Policy assured that no one will be left without help. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful weekend.